So, before we start talking about the book, you were one of the first people to sort of pull everybody's coattail and say, you know, you never want to joke about the assassination of a president.
In regard to Kathy.
And
No, I mean, I hope that we are in a place as a country where we at least can agree on that.
Yeah.
That's right.
I would hope that we can at least agree that it's never funny to joke about violence toward anyone. And particularly in this politically charged moment toward our president.
That's right. Right, excellent. You know, when your mother didn't win the election, you know, a lot of people on my team were very upset and devastated and really surprised, frankly. You too. Your mother too. I mean, I saw her commencement speech at Wellesley, and she's saying, you know, she hit the bottle.
Well, I think that's an overstatement.
Little Chardonnay, organizing her closet.
Little Chardonnay, maybe, and a lot of Charlotte, thankfully.
A lot
of
but I was wondering, you know, there are ways to cope. You know, I organize closets when I have a bad time, or I clean the refrigerator.
Oh, me too.
Do you do that too? So I'm wondering, how did you help your mom to cope with it after this devastating loss to the country?
We spent lots of time with my children. My son Aiden is 11 months old now. My daughter Charlotte is 2.5. And the unexpected blessing has been all the time that we've been able to spend together as a family. Charlotte right now is obsessed with Peter Rabbit. And so a couple weekends ago, we planted a garden at my parents' house in Chappaqua, which was really nice. So seeing my mother and my father like dig in the dirt with my daughter. Like such an unforeseen gift that my daughter was giving me to see my parents in that way. Because although I'm sure that we did that as a child, because my mother told me we planted tomatoes and petunias and other things.
You don't remember that?
I don't remember that.
Because it's all been political.
Well, no, just because I was 3 and I don't remember that.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about since then, as a child, you probably had to witness them in politics mostly.
No, I mean, my memories as a kid are, you know, my parents coming to my dance recitals or my choir recitals or helping me with my science homework.
Which is wonderful. And aren't grandparents something? Like, they treat the grandkids in ways you would never experience yourself.
Sometimes. It's the best.
Sometimes unbelievable.
I think my husband is one of 11. And so, yes, I know, Sarah, one of 11. And so my mother-in-law has a brood of grandkids.
Wow.
So when
she's still standing.
She is, amazingly. And so when we told her, you know, we were expecting our first child, she was so excited that our first child was going to join the family, right? My parents acted as if like the whole universe had shifted. And I think it's good for our kids that kind of they have this team on my husband's side, and that now they really are the center of the universe for my parents. And I think that's a real blessing.
We want to switch gears a little bit, just get into a little bit of politics. Your mom recently claimed, she was asked in an interview about the election, and she said that if it weren't for Comey's interference, Russia's interference, that it's likely that she would be president right now. And a lot of her supporters felt that they wanted to see more from her in that moment. They wanted her to take some personal responsibility for voters' trust issues with her, for maybe the Democratic Party not having a great ground game in some states and not having messaging in some states that was really good, so that they could fix the problem moving forward. Has she changed her mind about how to approach this topic to kind of ease her supporters' worries and maybe facilitate growth for the party in the future?
Well, Jedediah, I think there are lots of questions in there. My mother has talked about this herself. She's working on a book now about the election. I had the privilege of campaigning in so many states for her, and I met so many of the remarkable organizers and volunteers. And as she said, you know, she's never going to blame her team. She had an amazing team of supporters, of surrogates, of staff. You know, more than 1 million people volunteered as part of her campaign effort. And so she's incredibly grateful for that. And she's proud of the swell in this country that is still fighting to protect our health care, fighting to ensure that hopefully we maybe do stay in the Paris Climate Accord, and all the things that she campaigned so hard for. And for me, I now think about my children, with all due respect to my mom, more than I think about my mom and the world that I want them to be able to grow up in. And that's kind of where I think my responsibility now lies as a mother and as a citizen. What can I do to help build the world that I want them to grow up in? Part of that is common decency, as we were talking about earlier. And part of that is standing up for policies that I think are important for all children.
But she also has taken some of the blame for it. I've heard her say that. And, you know, maybe people can have two thoughts in their head at once. It was the Russians, and I made mistakes. She said it.
She did.
What do they want from her?
She did.
Well, we're never going to know.
Like you
we're
said,
never going to know.
You may love your mother more than you do.
We can split credit on that.
Okay.
I think it's a tie.
I have seen a change in you, though. You weren't very political, I think, of course, growing up. And then on Twitter, though, lately, you've gotten really feisty and kind of sassy. You know, you tweet about healthcare, you tweet about the environment. So I have to ask you, is it con fefe or con fifi? And what does it mean?
I think it can mean whatever we each want it to mean, right? I mean,
Yes.
even the dictionary sort of said, you know, they were going to stay out of it, right? Merriam-Webster.
Yes, yes.
So arguably it's gotten a little bit spicier since the election.
Yeah, that's a good account to follow.
It is a good account to follow. So, you know, I think that we have so many more important issues confronting us today.
Yeah.
I mean, even this morning, in addition to the rumored withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords, another rumor that the Trump administration is going to take away every woman's right to free contraception as part of their employer-mandated insurance. So, you know, there's a lot that I think we need to focus on. But comic relief is important, too. And so, con fifi, con fefe, you know.
But why have you
like
gotten...
tomato.
Why are you spicier now? Is there... Your mother isn't running anymore. Is there
Maybe
perhaps...
she's pissed.
Yeah.
Well, I think...
Maybe. Just curious.
Well, last year, I did hundreds of events and interviews throughout the campaign. Was grateful to be kind of on The View as part of that. And what I'm saying now on social media, I was saying, you know, in interviews and on the stage. I mean, I was not shy in calling out, well, everyone, you know, calling out my concerns about, I know you were talking about fake news earlier, sort of, you know, fake news and fake science around vaccinations, for example, or my concern that we've lost sort of a scientific consensus around climate change and so much else.
But have we all lost that?
Well, hopefully not.
A couple people
not. Or calling out hate speech when I see it, and also standing up for common decency. Because to your point about holding two thoughts in our heads and our hearts, I think we have to both be able to say, this is unacceptable from a common decency perspective. This is unacceptable from an American values perspective. Even if the person who may be saying something is otherwise someone we might agree with.
Yeah.
So,
well, you've said you're not interested in running for a political office, but your political tweets do give people hope. Is there anything that would change your mind?
I think, you know, as I've said before,
You made that.
I don't think being a citizen is something that just happens on election day.
Yeah.
You know, I think registering to vote, showing up to vote is hugely important.
Yes.
Right.
I also think
learned that.
standing up for what we believe, saying what we believe, saying what we're both for and against, standing in opposition to and an affirmation of, I think is hugely important. I am incredibly encouraged, Sarah, by the more than 13,000 young women who've reached out to Emily's List, Off the Sidelines, and others saying they now want to run for office.
Yes.
For city council, for the school board, for state legislatures, for Congress. And so I hope that we will have more women throwing their hat in the ring, and I look forward to supporting some of those women in the future.
Yes. So everybody calm down. It's not happening in 2020. But what is happening is that we're going to come back with more with Chelsea Clinton.
With Chelsea Clinton. And Chelsea, I know being a mom inspired you to write this book. And the book is about 13 women who made a difference in the world. What are you hoping little girls learn from this book, kids learn from this book?
There's a quote that I include from this book from Sally Ride. She said often, and I actually had the chance to hear her say this because she spoke at my space camp graduation 20-some-odd years ago, where she said, it was great, I highly recommend it if you're interested in space, science, exploration, discovery. And I remember hearing her then as a kid, and something that I know she said often, which is, it's hard for each of us to imagine what we can't see. Yes. And so I hope that sharing these stories help more girls imagine themselves as astronauts, as journalists, as activists, as athletes, as artists, as Supreme Court justices. I hope it also helps little boys see kind of their sisters, their classmates equally.
That's right.
In that way.
Yeah.
Wow, the book is beautiful, actually, to look at.
You.
It's amazing.
The illustrator.
And it's gorgeous. And your mom makes a cameo in the book as well. And I'm just curious how you went about deciding who to include, because everyone that you chose is really powerful and has a really great message.
I thought about the women who had inspired me over time. So the young women I remember learning about in school, Ruby Bridges and Claudette Colvin, who were titans of the civil rights movement, even before kind of they turned 18.
Yeah.
I mean, Ruby Bridges was 6 when she integrated her public elementary school in New Orleans, something I've thought about a lot recently, given recent events in New Orleans. Sally Ride, I already kind of shared how I came to know her story. I was a dancer as a child, and so I loved Maria Tallchief. I was never going to be as good as Maria Tallchief, but I remember watching old videos of her. When I was pregnant for the first time with Charlotte, I learned about Virginia Apgar, who developed the Apgar test, which those of us who are parents, you know, that was developed decades ago, and it's still the gold standard test to assess newborns' health around the world. I remember watching Sonia Sotomayor and her confirmation hearings and just being so impressed by her. And I've looked up to Oprah for as long as I can remember, and so just kind of the women who've inspired me over time. And then I included Margaret Chase Smith, who was a big inspiration for my mom, who was the first woman to serve in both the House and the Senate, a Republican, and really someone, because she stood up against Joseph McCarthy, so what she stood against, but also what she stood for. She helped lead the congressional efforts to invest more in the space program. I knew that she'd had such an impact on my mom, and so I remember hearing my mom talk to me about her as a child. So kind of those are just some of the reasons why I included the women that I feature.
Well, your book teaches history, but in our constant quest to get a laugh around here.
But Joy, I don't think you have to try so hard.
Are you aware of some of these other books that we have come up with for your mother's? Good Night, Vlad.
That's for a collection.
I was not aware of that, but I have to say, you have Runaway Bunny still on the back, which is my daughter's current favorite, alongside Peter Rabbit. She's obsessed with rabbits, back to Why We Planted the Garden.
All right. Is she aware of Donald and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad 4 Years?
No. Also not aware of that.
Okay. Our kids' books don't. Probably also not going to be read to my 2.5-year-old.
And the ever popular.
So Joy reads to her grandson.
I'm going to read Where the Fired Things Are.
Yeah.
Also not aware of that.
Flynn and Comey.
I have to say, Joy.
Should add Spicer soon, I have a feeling.
Well, I think we're going to stick with the original, Where the Wild Things Are, and the original Margaret Wise Brown books of Good Night Moon and Runaway Bunny.
Should stick with this more than that. Our thanks to Chelsea Clinton. Her new book is called She Persisted, and members of our audience are going home with a copy. We'll be right back.